So yeah, you see, I made something like this, and inside this again, I'm going to create another thing which is bold, and for which I'm going to give the class ID to be something like 3. Okay, so let me make this also ID so that it will be very clear. Okay, now what I made some hierarchy. Okay, now what I wanted you to understand is that you have to understand the tree structure of HTML, because when you know the tree structure, then you can handle things very easily. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll make the tree structure of it. Okay, so you are recording, right? So firstly, let us start from this body. Okay, let us start from this body and forget about the script tag. Okay. Now body is a kind of root element, we say. Okay, what is it? It is the root element. Okay, now inside body, how many elements are there? Inside, directly inside body, how many elements are there? Just directly inside body, only a single element, which is div with an ID of what? 1. Because the remaining 2, which is paragraph and bold, someone unmute and continuously tell me whether I'm audible or not. Just give some acknowledgement continuously.
Audible, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So now you see this paragraph and this bold are not directly inside body, but they are inside of this div. Okay. So that's why I'm not writing all those 2 here, because the children of this body is only one, which is what? Yeah. I told you, right? You forget about the script. You forget about the script. This is not a HTML element. Okay. Of course, it is an HTML element, but it is not going to show up on the document, right? So that's why you forget about this, and just come back to only this HTML. Okay. Now body is the one which is a kind of root element, and inside that we are having only single element, which is div with an ID of 1. And inside div, how many elements we have? Again, a single element, which is paragraph, and which is having an ID of what? 2. And inside this body, what inside this para, what we are having?
Bold.
Bold with an ID of
3.
3. I'll write 3 over here. Okay. So this is how the hierarchy is there. For example, let me try to add another thing, which is div child, something like this. And inside this, I'm having a bold. Okay. Bold text. Okay. Here is this. Now inside this body, how many elements are there now?
2
inside
elements.
body, 2 elements. Yes or no?
2 elements.
What are they? What are they?
Div and paragraph.
Div and paragraph. See this paragraph, where it is present inside?
Check the div.
It is present inside 1. Hello?
Sir, actually, there
Am I
is
not
only
audible?
one. Yeah, you are audible, sir. Actually, only one
Yes,
element
yes.
is present in body, sir. And in
Yes, exactly. And inside that, how many we are having? A paragraph we are having, you see, this is the paragraph which we are having inside 1, and another one is this one.
Yes,
just
sir.
now I added, right? So inside this, there is another child is there for this. So what is this?
That
It is child.
child.
The class of div with a class of child. Okay. And inside this div, do we have anything?
Yes, sir. There is.
Yes, we are having another one which is bold. Yes, we are having another thing which is bold. So this is how the HTML is, looked by the JavaScript. Okay. Now, for example, if you want to edit something in this particular element, how do you edit? How do you edit? You will attach an ID for this, okay, or a class name for it. Okay. You will attach an ID or a class name for this, and you select that in the JavaScript, and you edit whatever the properties you want, right? Is that what we did right yesterday? For example, if I want to edit it, if I want to edit this color, so firstly I'll add the ID which is bold. Let us say, okay, bold is not given to any of the IDs, so I'm giving an ID of bold for this, and now I'll select that in the JavaScript. How do I select? Let bold is equal to, or B is equal to something like document dot get element by ID, which is the ID name is bold. Okay. And now what I'll do is that I'll make its color to be red. How can I make that? Just b dot style dot color, right?
That is
so that's how I can attach this. So Which one? B is an array. You are telling it B is an array. Is that true? Can someone else solve this? Can someone else tell? Is B is an array or a single object? Just
B is
look at this function.
a single object.
Actually,
Yes, it is not an array.
ID.
Yeah, we are
It is a single
accessing this
object.
function which is element by ID. So it is going to return only single element which is having an ID of bold. Okay, and for that element, I'm going to change its style. And in the style, I'm going to change only a single property called color to red. Okay, so if I save this thing, you see this got converted into red because I did not write these two instructions in the function. So this will be executed fatafat. So that's why when the browser executes this second instruction, it turned into red immediately. Just after loading, it turning into red immediately. Okay, fine. Now, for example, if you want to edit the inner text of it, so this is we call as inner text. So since you somehow targeted this particular entire element, so let me log that entire element in the document. So console.log, what is that element? B. Okay, so let me save, and you see we log this element right in the console. So this is the entire element, and if I want to access the ID of this element, what should I do? ID value. I want to get this ID value. ID is an HTML attribute. I told you when you want to directly access
ID
the
name.
attributes, you just need to select that particular element. So that element in this case is B, and if you want to select the some HTML attribute of that, you just need to do something like this: B dot the attribute whichever you want to select. So I want to see the ID. So that means ID attribute I want to see. So B dot ID will print what? It will print the ID of that. You see bold has been printed at the end. Okay, you see I selected now from here it started until here bold. Okay, and then if I wanted to print something else like the style, if I wanted to print the style of it, okay, so style in the style I wanted to print the color. So B dot style is going to print the style, and in that if I wanted to print the color, so I can save this, and you see we got an empty color. That means the default color, which is black. Black actually, it has to show something like black, but since it was the default one second guys. If we assign some class names to it, okay, so this is how a single HTML element looks like. So let me write it organizedly for a particular every HTML element. Actually, this I was supposed to teach yesterday itself, but I thought you were getting, but after looking at your, what you are doing, I got to know that you were not able to understand this. Okay, so that's why I would like to make a repeat on this. Every HTML element will have some basic things like this. So I told you this one also yesterday. So this one, like every HTML element, again I'm writing HTML element will be a kind of variable, and this variable will contain something like inner text. Okay, and it will be whatever the text inside present. So some text. Okay, and then it will also have an ID. If we give some ID, that ID will be there, and it will have something called class name, and these are the class names that we assign to it. Okay, something like this. Okay, and then after this we will have some more things like we will have style, and this style is going to have another object. So in this it is going to have some color, something like red, and it will have something like background color. Okay, background color, and it will be something like blue or whatever the color. I'm just writing some values. Okay, and it will have some value called display. Okay, display something like inline block, something like this, inline block. Do you understand this or not? So every HTML element will look something like this. Let me comment on this. Okay, now if we somehow able to target this element by using these functionalities. Now B is a kind of an HTML element, right? And if I wanted to, so you analogous to this. Okay, so if I wanted to access the inner text of this bold, how can I access? So that element dot, right? That element which is B dot inner text.
Inner text.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes,
So this
inner
is how
text.
I can access what is there inside that. So let me remove these two and let me save that. And you see what we are getting? We are getting whatever the text that is present inside that. Inside that means this one that is showing.
Yes, sir.
For example, if I attach some class name also. So class is equal to some bold one. Okay. And then I'll also give some styling for this. So style, activate, and in color of red. Okay. And background color of blue, something like this. Okay. Now I've given two style attribute is there for this, class attribute is there, and ID attribute is there. Okay. If I wanted to look at all of them, so then, for example, if I wanted to look the ID, so how can I look for the ID? So ID is directly present inside any particular HTML element. Now I want to get the ID of this particular HTML element. So how can I access that? Just B dot ID. Okay. And then if I wanted to get the class name, B dot actually class we supposed to use class, but why we are not using is just because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So for this class only we have an exception. We have to make it as class name. Okay, so the simple thing, I'm targeting this attribute names, ID, class, and style. Now inside this style, if I wanted to see this color, how can I see? So simply, I'll make a console log again. Console log. That style is going to access this entire object. And in this object, if I wanted to look for color, so simply dot color.
Square bracket.
Not array. It is an object, right? Okay. Or else we can do something like this. No, we can do something like this. So this is what destructuring an objects, right? So in this object, if I wanted to, if I somehow capture this object, in this object, if I wanted to do this, look for this color, then this object dot color, right? So this B dot style is going to capture that entire object, which is the style object. Okay. So this style object. And if I wanted to see the color of this, how can I see? B dot style dot the color. Yes or no? And if I wanted to look for the background color also, B dot style dot background color. And I told you when hyphens are there in the CSS attribute, you have to turn it into camel case. That means after hyphen, you have to make the letter to be in capital. Okay. Okay. So this is what. Now if I save, you see bold text is the inner text. Bold is actually the ID. IDs. You see bold is assigned to ID. And then bold one is actually the class name. You see, we got class name, and then red and blue are the color and background color. So how I got all of this? You understand? Simply whenever you target that node or an element, then you can access all of its properties like this. Okay, is this fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine.
So let me do one thing. Let me copy all of this. Okay. And paste it. This is the most important. Those who understand this, they can, play with JavaScript. I mean the DOM. Okay, I'll paste it in the chat box for your reference. Naveen, is this recording now?
Yes, sir. Recording has been started.
Okay, all right. So this is how we can access elements. Now, for example, if I let us say I have a div, okay, a div with an ID of list, and inside this I have some text. Okay, now if you wanted to see, by default it will show, right? By default it will show. Okay, and upon execution of a function like this, okay, I will execute this function, and upon execution what I want to do is that I want to hide this. Okay, or I wanted to change its color. I wanted to change its, inner text or something like this. Let us say I want to change this inner text to something else. How can I change? Firstly, I need to target that element.
Your element is equal to.
Yes. So let it be div, and this element is equal to
Document dot get element by ID.
Yeah. What is this? Document dot get element by ID. What was the ID for the test?
ID is
Okay.
the test.
And now I captured somehow that node. Okay. I captured the node of that. Now I am interested to change its inner text to Arvind. How can I change this element dot inner text
is equal to write something.
Yes. And before that, before changing it into it, I would like to log the original value of its inner text. Okay. So div dot inner text. I'm logging here. So let me save that. And this function, how can I execute this function? Either I can create a button and attach upon clicking. Okay. So on click, that function I want to execute, and I'll make a click me. Okay. And when you click on this function, then only this function gets executed, right? So whenever this function gets executed, firstly, we are trying to capture the element, and then we are logging what is there inside that. And then we are changing that inside text, which is by using inner text property, to something else. So let me save this. And you see, when I click on this, you see that text inside this will be changed into Arvind, you see. And whatever the before changing, this line, at line number 4, this was changed. And that means at line number 3, what should it print? It should print the previous value of it. Okay. Did you understand this?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Sir, for changing the text, we use inner text.
Yes, exactly.
Sir, can you repeat once because your voice is starting to get very.
Yeah, let me repeat. So simple thing, what I did here is that my interest is to, in this particular division element. Okay, this is a division element, and in this, I want to change this color upon doing an event. Like upon clicking on this button, I want to execute a function called func. So inside that function, I want to remove this text and I want to put my name inside that. So to do that, firstly, we need to write the function, whichever will execute after clicking on the button. So this function will be executed after clicking on that. Okay. Now what I'll do is that, firstly, I have to capture the element. Okay. I'll capture that element, which is div, and I'll capture it by using document dot get element by ID. And you see, this div is actually having an ID. So that's how I can select that element. What is the ID of that particular div? Test.
Yes.
Okay. And now for this element, I'm going to make div dot inner text is equal to whatever I wanted to write. So I wanted to write my names or something like this. I will let me write something like this. Okay, let me save that. And when I click on this, what will happen? This function will execute. So in this function, what I'm trying to do, first I capture the function element, and for that element, I'm changing the inner text property to Arvind. Okay, so let me click on this, and you see it was turning into Arvind now. Did you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yes. Now, for example, there is an input is there. Okay, input with an ID of test again, and for this input, the ID is test, and the value. You know what is value of an input? Value is done whatever the text is there inside that input. You know that or not?
Yes, sir.
Value is equal to, for example, Arvind. By default, I want to have Arvind inside that. So let me say that. And you see inside this input, we are having the value to be Arvind. And can I edit? I can. So when I'm editing, what will happen? Now, if I blur means clicking on outside. 1 second. Blurring means when you edit, when you edit something like this, and when you click out of that, now it is actually focused. Focused means the cursor is blinking inside the input box. When I'm blurring means that means click on outside of this box. Now I got blurred. So whenever you edit something and blur it, what will happen is that the value attribute, whichever is Arvind is there, that will be changed. Okay. Did you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Actually, this is the default value. For every input, by default, the value will be set to null. But you don't see this value attribute inside this input, but it will be applied behind the scenes for input. Okay. Even if I don't have like this, so if I write something, now if I blur, what is the value attribute for this?
That you
this
have
particular
given,
text.
given.
Yes, whatever the text that I have given, that will be there. One second.
Again. Again.
Now it is audible.
No. Actually, I was not talking anything. I got a call. Okay. So again, Vijay called me and he was talking about that. Now, what was that? We are here, right? So now what I'm interested to do is that whenever I click on this, I want to capture the value of it. Okay. So let me save this. And what is the default value? Let me keep a default value of Arvind. Okay. Value Arvind. Something like this. Okay. And let me save that. And you see the value of this input is Arvind. That means the value is filled as Arvind. Now inside this, I'm going to handle that function found. Okay. And inside this, see, I told you whenever you are accessing the type attribute or ID attribute, what you should need, you have to select this element first, and you can directly, that element dot type will print the value of the type, and that element dot ID will print the test, and that element dot value will print the value. Yes or no? So this is how an HTML element is there, right? So if you want to print any attributes of that HTML element, you can just that log like this, that HTML element dot whatever the property that you want to print. Okay, let me target that. Actually, this input is having an ID of test, so I can select that by using let input is equal to what? How can I select that? Document dot
Get element by ID.
Get element by ID, the ID of that. Now what is captured? Input test, input with an ID of test captured into input variable. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
What do I mean by this input variable? So this one. So can I also have any other variable name like this? Yes, I can have.
Yeah.
But the only thing is you have to follow the naming convention because it is just a variable. Okay. So let me make it back to input. And now I'm interested to log its ID. Okay. How can I log? Simply input dot ID. ID. Okay. If you want to log the type of this input, so I can log that like this, right? So input dot type. And if I want to log the value of this, I can log input dot value, something like this. So let me save. It is going to print ID, type, as well as value. So let me save this. And you see, by default, the value is set to Arvind, and I'm not editing anything. And type is set to text, and the ID is set to test. When I click on this button, what will happen? This will be executed, and it is going to print all these three values. Let me click on this, and you see, test is the ID, which is the first value, and the second one is the type of this, which is text, of course, and the third one is Arvind. Now, can you tell me if I change this text into something like password? Okay, and if I click on this, what will be the second value now? Input dot type
Will be, sir, password number actually.
It will be password or number. See, this input means I'm going to target this input from the document. Yes or no? And in this document, what is the type value? Password. And what is the value of ID property? Test it is. What is the value of value property? Arvind it is. So if you want to get these values, how can I can get like this. Input dot ID is going to print the ID of this particular input. That means this one. Okay, that is test. Okay. And input dot type is going to print what? The type of this, which is password. Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Password.
Yeah, similarly, value is going to be printed as the Arvind. Okay. So let me save this and let me click on this. And now you say test is the ID, password is the type, and Arvind is the value. So let me try to edit something. So I have edited something, and this is not yet updated in the value property. When will it updated? When I blur on this. Now the value also got updated. So when I click on this now, what happened? The value is changed to something else. You see whatever I updated here. Okay, and the type is still password, and the test value is still test is the ID. Okay, for example, if I wanted to change the type to text, how can I change? Simply that element which is
Input dot inner text.
No. Why in a text? I want to edit the attribute which is
Type only. So you want to type. Okay, sir.
want to edit the